And we are live. Hello, everybody. I think there's folks coming into the webinar room, so welcome. We have a lot to go through today in the hour. The job is to just drop as much knowledge as we possibly can, be as value add as we possibly can, so that everyone gets their money's worth in this webinar. So we're going to be talking about cross-border complexity. It means a lot to a lot of different people. And I think now is an important time to be talking about cross-border complexities, given the environment that we're in. A lot of other countries are opening back up in advance of the United States, and there could be an opportunity to capitalize on that. But we have a lot to go through today, so I'm going to just flip through the presentation. And just if you want to, just chat in where you're dialing in from, maybe the best meal you've made if you're stuck at home, or if you're going out, what's the best restaurant you've been to? That'd be awesome. I see a New York City just chatted in. Fantastic. And so we're going to go through today, why should you be doing cross-border right now, navigating fulfillment complexities. We're going to be talking about conversational commerce and chatting back in the language of where you're selling into. We're going to talk about post-purchase, the impact of post-purchase in the international markets, along with payments, which is I'm really excited about, and cross-border shipping. And then we'll go into a fast Q&A. There is going to be a surprise at the end of some different presentations here where people are going to be having offers, so stay tuned for those offers. Along with that, I'm going to try to pull in somebody from the audience at the end who I have a tremendous amount of respect for, who's been notorious in the international space, who I think will drop a lot of value. So just stay tuned all the way through the end. I think it's going to be a lot of fun today. So before we get started, I just want to thank everyone for joining, taking time out of their day, wherever they are, to join, and certainly to the panelists that are joining us today that are contributing and dropping the kind of value that we all expect from these awesome and premier brands. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with Anthony, and we'll go down, and just if you can just quickly share your background, why you're here, that'd be great.
Yeah, most definitely. Great to meet everybody. So I am the Senior Director of Platform Strategy at ShipBob, and what that has meant over the last year or so is actually launching our international fulfillment centers with one of our other co-founders. So we recently launched in Ottawa and in Kilkenny, Ireland, to help our customers actually get across the border and start fulfilling products from those home countries. So it's been a really fun year. We're excited to share our early learnings here and answer any questions about international fulfillment.
Awesome. Adam.
Yeah, hey everybody, my name is Adam Gardner. I've been in SaaS and e-commerce for the last 10 years, currently handling strategic partnerships for Route, and a lot of what's been really exciting is hammering out some of these partnerships with platforms so that we can work on as many of those platforms as possible. We realize there's some localization that goes on there, and excited to essentially make Route available to merchants all over the world and their customers all over the world.
Nicole, you're up.
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole. I'm actually new to the e-com space, but I've been working with a lot of D2C brands over the last year. And I manage strategic partnerships out of East Coast. So I'm like the one-man team out in New York. And I'm excited to kind of talk to you guys about conversational commerce through your support center and how you can really capitalize on those opportunities across multicultural language barriers.
Bam. Andre?
Boom. What's up, everybody? My name is Andre Storm. I'm the Director of Sales here at Passport Shipping. We are building the best international shipping carrier for direct-to-consumer brands. I've been involved in e-commerce, the D2C community, the last 5 or 6 years. Most of my career has been in fulfillment, actually working at the commerce and fulfillment division of Ingram Micro through acquisition of a company called Shipwire. Many of you guys might be accustomed to, and yeah, really excited to talk to you guys today about cross-border shipping.
And last but not least, Tony.
Well, thanks, Chad. Looking forward to talking to everybody. My name is Tony Sorbonne. I am Director of Customer Growth at Currency Cloud. We build banking networks around the world, helping clients receive, convert, and collect money to make it cheaper and easier for you to expand internationally.
Awesome. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead. If you have questions during the presentation, we want to make sure we get to them and we're answering them in real time on demand. So there's a questions tab. Throw your questions in the question tab as they come up. And also, if you want to just chat, feel free to chat. We'd love for you to chat us as we're discussing. If we're missing anything, just hit us up. We also, what's the next slide here? Some other logistics here. Poll questions. We'll be having poll questions in advance. There's probably one up because Gina's on it, asking people, what are you currently selling in other countries? And so if you want to we want to take a pulse of where people are at that are joining this webinar, that'd be great. It's important to know who's on. And so if you can just go into the poll tab, answer the question, I promise it won't hurt. And it looks like a lot of people are focused, at least right now, still seeing a lot of North America coming in the mix. Heavy North America. All right, we'll go back to that. But I guess that's maybe why people are dialed into this presentation. Like I mentioned, there's gonna be some special offers throughout the presentation, and then I've got a pretty awesome guest individual who will join us at the end, who I think could be helpful answering any questions those that you may have. I'll be moderating. My name is Chad Rubin, co-founder here at Stubana. I've been in e-commerce for a decade, pretty much as old as the first generation Nintendo. So I've been doing it a really long time, but more importantly, have been through the problems that everyone else is experiencing. So I have a lot of kinship with those that are dialing in, that are going through the same pain that other merchants and brands are going through. Stubana just powers a lot of back-end operations for fast-growing brands across the internet. Feel free to check this out whenever you want. All right, so my part of the presentation today is really about using infrastructure to power or empower you to accelerate globally. It's all about really the systems that you have, and you have to be a system thinker, especially not only if you're just focusing on domestic market, but as you're focusing on the international market. And essentially, COVID has just accelerated e-commerce, not only in the United States, it's accelerated actually across the world. And a lot of these countries are reopening faster than the US right now. And so it's important to see if you can dip your toes in the water, see if it's warm. So there's some great stats here to point to. Cross-border shopping is 20% roughly of e-commerce in 2022, according to Forrester. But like, I think a really important one was 25% of third-party units sold on Amazon are cross-border sales, and that's not going away anytime soon. So today we're going to talk about how you can essentially identify, number one, uniquely identify where you want to go in e-commerce when you go international, because it's not a one-size-fits-all opportunity. And so, for example, for me, before Stubana, we manufacture coffee filters and vacuum filters. Well, the vacuums are very different in North America and in Canada versus in the UK or in Germany, for that matter. And so, for example, a vacuum in the UK is called a Hoover, even though Hoover is a brand here in the United States. So identifying what is a great market for you. Not all products can flow into the US market. That'll also be important to flow into the European market or any other market. So it's important to just not try to replicate your strategy in the US across other places. One of my interesting points that I want to highlight here is essentially looking at your customer base and understanding your demographic of who's buying from you, and thinking very critically, okay, is this buyer somewhere else internationally? And if they are internationally somewhere, sitting somewhere in another seat, buying from home that meet the same demographic that you have, ding, ding, it's likely a great opportunity that you can actually capitalize on. So, moving on to the next slide here, I got to go quick because we only have 5 minutes and I want to squeeze in as much as I can. I really believe in the strategy of dipping your toes in the water to see if it's warm. I've made the mistake of going all in, building out massive 3PL presences in international markets for it to just fail. So for me, I actually prefer to actually go in with a slightly different strategy, sometimes finding a 3PL, whether it's ShipBob or another one, that could essentially accept maybe high velocity SKUs that you've analyzed to see if the waters are warm. Another option, by the way, is to use the marketplace strategy. Using marketplaces, not only as a point of discovery, so you can actually analyze a lot of data on Amazon to figure out what's selling internationally to capitalize on that, but Amazon has built out this logistics network with FBA, and using a software like Stubana to essentially go multi-channel fulfillment from your FBA fulfillment center to your off-channel customer. And then maybe as you start to build up a nice rhythm and a nice cadence with proper fulfillment or a high velocity fulfillment, getting that into a 3PL and figuring out your return strategy as well. There's a lot of long tail marketplaces to discuss. Again, I don't, like, for example, vacuums, people in Latin America aren't really using vacuum cleaners, but they're using Swiffers or sweepers. And so figuring out which marketplaces you want to capitalize on with what product. And for example, in our app store, we've got Mercado Libre that you can capitalize on if you want to go international. But again, I think a lot of it comes to figuring out what's being sold across the international marketplaces like Amazon, doing that research. There's a lot of data. There's these data tools that you can use like Helium 10 or Viral Launch or some others that you can actually see what the velocity is, what the demand is, and the search velocity is to see if you want to capitalize on that demand. Because if there's a lot of demand and there's no supply, there's likely an opportunity. The other thing you want to do, especially as you're selling internationally, is like shipping costs get pretty crazy. And we'll talk more about that later on in the presentation. But understanding what's your SKU profitability rolled up by all the channels you're selling on, including your shipping costs when you're actually selling internationally, because that's going to eat up a lot of your margin. So you have to have a real profit mindset in mind in terms of analyzing all the hidden fees that are across the marketplaces you're selling on, along with the fees, the cross-border fees around shipping, flowing into Skubana so you can actually see your profit per SKU per channel. I know I'm going quick, so if you have questions, just hit me up either in the chat or you can email me at chat@Skubana. The other thing that's important is essentially, this is what happened with my e-commerce business. We own the trademark of Think Crucial, and what happened was that when one day we were trying to import a container in from China, and somebody was actually sitting and hijacked our trademark. So it's important to actually understand your trademark strategy when you're also internationally, because your US trademark actually can't be used or parlayed into other markets. And so we actually had to buy our trademark from that individual that was sitting on it in the international country. Kind of crazy. I know it's 2020, but that happened. All right. And then you can also just monitoring what other people are selling internationally, monitoring what's working, what's not working, even buying from some of your competitors internationally and seeing how they're fulfilling is really, really important. The other thing I want to point out is a lot of people try to use their fulfillment or their manufacturer to do the fulfillment for you, and I want to kind of rethink that situation, because if your vendor is doing the fulfillment for you, a lot of times they can just disintermediate you and go direct to consumer themselves. You don't want to train your competitor to do what you're doing. You do want to have a strong supplier relationship, and you do want to have a nice agreement with them. That's really important. This is a really interesting example. Tushy, they're on Skubana, customer of ours. They sell bidets. So when the TP thing went crazy in the United States during the pandemic, bidets were the next big thing. They sold out, and they needed to go directly from China direct to the United States to bypass the lead time, and we allowed them to do that. We helped them find a warehouse in Asia, set them up literally overnight, and they went from Asia direct to the consumer, and they've been doing it ever since. They've been really happy with the strategy, but it's important to have an agile system to help you do it. Last thing to mention is that the reason why we do these webinars, it's all about the community. It's all about learning from other people who've been there, done that, dropping a lot of value. Now more than ever, we need connection and we need help. And one way we're doing that is we essentially launched a Slack group for brands, built by brands, to help brands. And so if you want to join, hit the link down below, join. We'd love for you to drop some knowledge and share wisdom and learn from others in the group. That being said, let's move on. We're moving on to Anthony.
Hello, good afternoon. I guess it's afternoon now. Chad, you pretty much just took about 1/3 of my presentation, so maybe we should just hire you to run all of our BD over at ShipBob. So
I'm sorry, I drink too much coffee. I'm sorry.
No, it's perfect. But yeah, as I said before, I'm the Senior Director of Platform Strategy over at ShipBob. For the last year, that's been building our international fulfillment solution for not only our brands that are in the domestic US and looking to expand into Canada and Europe, but also brands that are in those like hyperlocal regions looking to have the same level of fulfillment and the vertically integrated software stack that we've built that helps our customers actually manage their back-end supply chain for everything that happens post-sale. We're looking to build that same network internationally as well. So in the next 5, which is some task, trying to cover all of this, because as we learned over the last year, there is a ton of pitfalls, hurdles, but it's also a really exciting space to be in. We're thinking about how do we actually make a decision to expand to either Europe, Canada, or worldwide in general, and then some mistakes to avoid that we've seen over the last year. Some quick and easy tips that hopefully will help guide the process. So, and just before we begin, ShipBob has been shipping internationally for about 6 years, all over the world through our fulfillment centers in the U.S. and our software integrations into a multitude of different platforms. But the last year is the first time that we've actually experienced launching into new physical facilities in these sites. So the last year has been a lot of learning, and we've been lucky to have some great brands that actually had some experience doing this before us. So, just a caveat that we're still learning too. So without further ado, how are you thinking about making the decision of going into Europe? We talk to brands on a daily basis that would love to expand into these international markets, but they don't have any sales there, or they're saying they have 100,000 views on their website, and 20% of those are coming from the UK. That question is like, okay, great. If I'm selling 100,000 units a month, that means I should send 10,000 units to the EU, and that's not necessarily the case, right? As Chad pointed out earlier, there's certain types of products that do well in different cultural regions, right? So we've actually had conversations with cultural consultants, because selling into different regions or different countries is there is some nuance to it. And as most of the e-commerce companies probably listening in here, a lot of your products that you're actually growing is based on your ability to market to these departments, right? So if you don't already have sales in an international region that you're looking to go into, I guess, how are you thinking about the back end traction that you're getting for your products, right? Are there a ton of key searches for, as Chad said, there's a vacuum, but maybe it's called a Hoover in a different region, right? Like, how are you actually getting those end customer pieces of feedback? And I think what we suggested at ShipBob to start is typically folks that don't have any sales internationally. We tell them, like, hey, turn on your free shipping. If you're shipping for the domestic US, turn on free international shipping and take a hit for a month and see how many orders you can get for, how many SKUs that you have in your entire portfolio. Usually keep it lean to, 10, 20 like key products that you want to actually ship out, but get some traction first and see what sells, and offer the same level of service that you would, whether it be an expedited ship option or a free shipping option that might take a week or 10 days to get there, and see if you get traction in these countries, right? Going from US to Canada is a little bit more simpler, obviously, because you're not having to travel over the Atlantic or the opposite direction to get into Southeast Asia or China to actually ship into. And so a lot of our customers have been getting more traction actually in Canada to start. The second one, and it seems really obvious, but we have a lot of brands that haven't done the due diligence on actually figuring out if their products can legally be sold there, right? And so, there's a binary aspect to it. Is if, CBD in Canada, there's only a certain amount of distributors that are actually legally allowed to distribute CBD, right? But in Europe, there's, in the EU specifically, there's, I think, 26 countries that allow it under a certain threshold, but there's 2 countries that don't allow it at all. So there's a lot of nuance to figure out before actually shipping to these countries. And that's specifically pertaining to the consumables, health foods, products like CBD, anything that needs to get ingested, health foods. If you're going into Canada, Health Canada is very strict on like snake oil salespeople, right? So they have a lot of regulations around labeling and new product development in this region. So, it seems obvious, but figure out the due diligence of, can I ship my product there, right? And then when you're thinking about costs, right? So when you're actually shipping into these foreign regions, sometimes the local cost of doing business is actually more expensive than the US, and the economies of scale of either your partner or the products that you're manufacturing from, you actually might be spending more actually to ship local, right? You have to have this cost benefit analysis of what's most important to these end customers in these regions? Is it transportation time? Is it free shipping? Is it cost? Like, how do I optimize for, you know, at the end of the day, converting more at checkout? And so you have to have a conversation of, are we willing to eat a little bit more on the shipping side to provide a delivery service that's just excellent? Or, you know, do I find a local partner in this region, you know, someone who just has fulfillment in Canada, who's been doing business for 20, 30 years, who might have deep relationships and really great costs with the carriers? Like, do I find a partner like that so I can make sure that I'd optimize for my bottom end cost to actually convert there?
And Anthony, do you recommend that folks should actually ship directly from the US abroad, or do you recommend actually establishing a footprint? Like, what will flip the switch either way?
I think our most successful brands have shipped from the US first, right? And this is a small sample size of folks that are US brands typically. So the folks that have shipped from the US for about 3 to 6 months, gotten to the point where they're doing, you know, 50, 100 orders a month. And the real thing that's holding them back, they're having some cart abandonment because of, you know, the cost of shipping at checkout, or the fact that they're not going to a .ca website, or all these local conversion points for actually making the end sale. Then they're saying, okay, well, there's an opportunity here. I have, you know, some traction, some early traction. Now it's optimizing, doing some A/B testing on our marketing campaigns, optimizing our checkout for, you know, what's the sweet spot for actually converting, you know, our cart size into free shipping and so on and so forth. So I would say that ship first from the US, and as I said, maybe offer a free expedited option where you're actually paying a premium. But it's a marketing expense in that regard, right? You're saying how many customers you can get by delivering the service that you would if you had the economies of scale of having thousands of orders abroad already. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I was just on mute. Absolutely, great.
Perfect. You know, as we said before, when you're thinking about your product category, right? So for example, we had a really large supplement brand in the US that was shipping in the US and Canada and Central America, and they were completely verified, you know, all the testing you could possibly do. But for some reason, there's an entire different, 3-letter acronym named agency in the UK, where they sent, you know, 20,000 units, and then it took another 8 weeks before they could actually get verified to ship those products out. So when you're thinking about the product categories, if you're sending anything with, you know, lithium-ion batteries, if it's a consumer electronic, if you have a consumable, if you have, you know, any sort of like CBD is always a big one. If you have any of these type of products where you needed to get any sort of like FDA license or, you know, hazard dangerous, clearance document in the US, like you almost certainly will have to in Europe and Canada specifically and worldwide. And it just takes a little bit of due diligence. And I would say if you're selling t-shirts, apparel, the whole nine, accessories, you know, consumer goods that aren't consumables, you should be all right. But when you start to get into, the health and beauty space, cosmetics, things like that, as well as consumables, it can get a little hairy. So we suggest, we work with some really great partners that help us actually navigate the Health Canada and also the EU regulatory landscape, and working with a freight importer and customs broker and things like that, which is very different than a fulfillment partner. We highly suggest, because they'll figure out how to, which gets us into our next point, actually navigate the cross-border taxes, tariffs, import fees, duties, etc. So I know I'm actually like zipping through for 5 minutes. I knew this was going to be tough, but essentially why we want to show this doc is that there are so many different things to consider when actually becoming a non-resident importer, both into, this is specifically for Canada, but working with a freight partner to actually get you through customs and working with a broker to clear that is, I highly suggest that you get a great partner that'll help you do that. Using your vendor on the manufacturing side to do that can work if you trust them and have a deep relationship. The last thing you want is $100,000 worth of product stuck in customs for, you know, weeks on end when you should be selling that inventory. So yeah, I think Nick is on this call as well, and my email is anthony@shipbob.com. So I'm sure there'll be a ton of questions that pop up, but happy to go in detail. You know, we have 4 or 5 calls a day with clients asking about international side of their fulfillment. So happy to talk to anybody about cross-border fulfillment and how you're thinking about this problem moving forward. We'd love to have those conversations. Here's a quick map of where ShipBob is in the US currently. So obviously in our recent expansion to Ottawa and Kilkenny are on there as well. But if you see, we have nationwide coverage with 2 sister facilities in Chicago and Dallas, and then border-to-border coverage from a fulfillment perspective. So I think we'll have a link after this, an email to talk to a ShipBob representative, myself or Nick. But happy to have an in-depth conversation about fulfillment with anybody on today. So thank you.
Awesome. We're moving on here. We're going to Gorgias.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. So I'm Nicole, as I mentioned before, and we work with Magento, Shopify, and recently just became a BigCommerce partner this week. So super excited. And I'm going to kind of talk to you guys about conversational commerce and how you can kind of navigate that through your support team. So I know we kind of talked about the COVID-19 effect and how that really impacted different businesses, but I also think that one thing to be aware of, especially as you're getting international customers, is what this means for your support team. So while maybe sales were up, the tickets created by channel actually increased almost 2 to 3x, but your support team was actually staying the same. So when you're getting these different customers across borders, it's also good to note that they don't always, the most common language is English, but there might also be room for you to kind of integrate different languages. Gorgias specifically, we actually can identify about 54 different languages. So when someone's writing in on support, like that's actually a really great opportunity to capitalize on that customer to make sure that you're speaking in their language, making sure that you're aware of kind of who your customer base is, especially during this time where we are seeing sales across so many different channels. One thing that we also noticed is a lot of the consumer messaging has changed. So specifically for kind of typical brands like Theragun that were known for being, group workouts outside in the gym. And now because that's all changed, they really changed their language to kind of be more aligned with the consumer. So making sure that that's aligned so that when people write in across different countries, you're very aware of kind of how they've been impacted, but also that the messaging is on point and that you're capturing that audience. Because I think, we always talk about turning your support team into a sales team because those are the ones that are dealing with your customers firsthand. So to really stay aligned with that kind of messaging, depending on what your customers' needs are, especially throughout this really crazy period. So a little bit back to Gorgias, so all your support in one place. So as I kind of mentioned, we can identify 54 languages. One thing that's really amazing about our product is that we've built our own machine learning database. So rather than you having to respond, multiple different times and in multiple different languages, you can actually create macros and pre-canned responses so that you can respond with a specific teammate who's actually speaking that language and assign them that workflow. But you can also kind of create automations around that so that you're driving efficiencies while also managing your support at the same time. You can create multiple Shopify stores in our platform, so any different languages or any different stores. And then you can also pull in relevant customer data. So you're actually going to understand where they're shipping to, what kind of a customer this is, how you should be speaking with them to really get a holistic view of your customer and make sure that you're creating different views, allowing your support team to optimize on those different customers that are coming in internationally to really optimize your support, but also drive efficiencies. So what we kind of found, especially with support, if you're not already doing chat or SMS or any type of email automation that allows you to respond in less than 10 minutes, we actually found that the conversion rate is 28%. So making sure that you're implementing these different work streams across different channels. So that includes email, chat, Facebook, Instagram, SMS, and phone calls. So if you respond to those within 10 minutes, we did a study to show that 28% was the conversion rate. For the impact on sales, we saw this directly impacted. So making sure that one, you have those languages aligned, and then two, making sure that you're really responding efficiently. We found that out of 500 tickets, almost 50% converted. So that's an additional $22,000 of sales if you respond in less than 2 minutes and 8 seconds. So having those languages pre-organized is really helpful and can already show how it affects your bottom line as well. Omnichannel approach, that's kind of something I just discussed about having your chat, email, Facebook, and Instagram all in one place. I think that, we're seeing a lot of support come in through Messenger and SMS and all over. And having those different workflows are really good opportunities for you to target new customers so that you're not missing out on those support opportunities. And that people are coming in from all different backgrounds, and having those readily available to respond and pull up their Shopify information from Instagram is really helpful for your customer support team, so that they're not responding and double allocating time across Instagram or Facebook as well as email. We can actually now identify if the email and phone number is associated with them, that they're your target audience. So yeah, just kind of to recap, we are 3,500 brands. We actually are growing to 4,000 customers pretty soon here, which is really exciting. We help you manage all your customer support in one place. So Facebook, Messenger, Instagram, email, chat, all the items I discussed, to really automate those responses, pull in those macros and variables so that you can kind of drive that foot traffic right away without having someone wait for those customer service requests. I know if I'm coming to a page and I'm writing in, I want a response right then and right now. And you want that customer service firsthand. And if I get bad customer service, I probably won't continue to purchase from you. And so to really activate across multiple channels definitely makes sense. Also automate where possible, especially now that you're getting so many sales, like those "where is my order" questions, those recurring repetitive questions that you can automate with your work stream. Definitely use that so that you can prioritize those really higher, more urgent items, so that you can be as efficient as possible and allow your team to focus on upselling. And that's all I got.
Thanks, Nicole.
2 months free as well. If you email me, just let me know, and we're happy to kind of set you up there.
Awesome. So there was a question that came in from Leo. Using Gorgias, reply in Spanish in US using Google Translate. By the way, we are using Gorgias. Why not add Google Translate inside your service? ? What's up?
Yeah, so we're definitely trying to integrate as much as we can. Of course, our team is getting asked for integrations on a daily. So right now, depending on, there's so many different French variables, like Canadian French, French from France. And so to have those be just one specific translator might not be the same for every single customer. So we kind of recommend that you kind of copy and paste that macro over, translate it how you would respond to that specific customer, so that we're not creating one language across all, because there are some variables between different language and dialects.
And how do you make sure, like, if you're responding to a customer in their own language and you make like a real bad translation using Google, is there any way, do you suggest that they get their scripts checked before sending those back to the customer?
Oh, 100%. I mean, we have teams, a Spanish speaking team or a French speaking team. If you're not already hired that person, then I would definitely recommend that you try and get as much resource as possible. The last thing you want is to lose out on a sale where you're not 100% accurate.
And then do you integrate with WooCommerce?
We do not. We do not integrate with WooCommerce, and that is not on the roadmap for right now, but BigCommerce, Magento, and Shopify.
Great. And just last question for you, because you are the customer success expert. What is the best CS experience you've had online?
Oh my gosh. So I kind of always talk about Apple, because I think that they've just been such a key person in the last however many years in retail, and now they've really brought that online. So I always tell people, definitely check out what Apple's doing. Obviously, we can't all be like them, but what you're paying a higher premium for. I always know I'm going to get things answered right away. The other thing is, I would encourage you to, message your competitors, see what their response times are, see what they're doing to kind of understand and benchmark what you can do better. But yeah, I mean, honestly, for me, I think it's honest. Postmates refunds me right away when I don't get a good food experience, and I love that. So they don't ask questions, and I think that really makes a difference, and I know I'll continue ordering.
Awesome. And then Diana asked, do order changes flow into Stubana from Gorgias? And Diana, you need to actually start pushing Gorgias on this, because there's multiple people that want this integration between Stubana and Gorgias. So just keep on yelling from the rooftops.
Yes.
Hopefully they'll make that integration happen and put it in our app store.
Yeah, we also have a product map, so we really welcome those kind of requests, because the more requests we get, the more I can push on engineering and be like, hey, look how many requests of this we have. So yeah, definitely would recommend you to check that out.
All right, last question here, and we're going to move on. Adria, hopefully I pronounced that correctly. Do you suggest responding in English and the user's native language when using translators such as Google Translate?
Sorry, so is that asking if they should respond in the same language that the person is from, or that they're asking it from?
I'm assuming, I don't know, let's have them ask in the chat, and maybe you'll monitor the chat, make sure that
I can respond right there. Yeah, for sure.
All right, boom.
Clarification.
Adam, thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.
Yeah, hey everybody. Oh good, I unmuted myself. I had to make sure I didn't make that mistake. Yeah, excited to jump in here. I'll dive in a little bit to Route Does, but just know that we are entirely focused on a suite of solutions for the post-purchase experience and for everything that goes on after a customer actually makes that purchase and how they can be taken care of after the fact. So initially, I want to give a little bit of context to what that means. You know, historically, brands have spent billions of dollars every year to optimize the customer journey. And we can break down the customer journey into post-purchase, point of purchase, pre-purchase, point of purchase, and post-purchase. But if we look at where all those billions of dollars are spent, it's really spent to help folks discover a product and then successfully make a purchase. And we certainly give lip service. We spend a little bit on customer retention. And obviously the folks at Gorgias have talked a lot about how we can do that in communications. But it doesn't get nearly the same amount of effort and focus that we spend on pre-purchase and point of purchase. But ultimately now where that shifted is that post-purchase experience is something that merchants have to take control of. I'll touch on it in detail here in a minute, but there is a juggernaut in the space that has elevated that level of expectation for customers by controlling that post-purchase experience to a point that customers put a lot of weight, in fact, the most emphasis on what happens in shipping and delivery as a key factor in whether or not they're actually going to come back and purchase with you again. And so as we look at expanding brands to be selling internationally, as we look at all the other complexities that are going on there, as we select partners to be able to deliver those, brands have to have some control and some ownership so that you're not turning off your customer journey from the time that a customer makes the purchase only to be able to pick it up again 1 to 14 days later when the customer then receives their package. It's a key part of the journey that we have to take control over. And the reason this became an issue is because of Amazon. Amazon decided a few years ago they weren't going to surrender that experience to a delivery company anymore. They were going to do it themselves so that they could maintain that customer journey consistently all the way from product discovery through to delivery and through to actually experiencing that product. And that's good and fine for Amazon, but it's elevated the customer's expectation. Just this week, I had to replace and return an order from Amazon, and it was stupidly easy. It was like 3 taps on the app to go pick the item that was wrong, explain what was wrong with it, and I was given a resolution in a few seconds. And so as consumers have experienced that with Amazon, we now expect that to be table stakes for every other brand. And consumers don't care if you just opened shop yesterday or if you have the money that Amazon has. They want that ease of treatment. They want, you know, just like we shared, they want the Postmates experience, no questions asked, refund my order, it was a bad experience just because I told you so. But obviously not everybody has the resources to spend the way Amazon spends, and that's really where we come in. I want to quantify what this means, that we're not just making this up, we're not just pulling this out of thin air or trying to magnify something that's not that big of a deal, because it is. If we look at the impact of doing this poorly, if a delivery goes wrong, 84% of customers will not return to an online store after a bad delivery experience. That's crazy. That's not logical, right? Because the brand isn't the one that failed the delivery. It's the delivery company that I partnered with. But in the consumer's mind, that delivery experience is so important, 84% of them won't come back if something goes wrong in delivery. And even greater than that, 94% of consumers blame the retailer after a delivery goes poorly. So we don't have the luxury as brands to separate ourselves from delivery anymore. It's part of the experience that customers are weighing on. But it's not all bad news. There's actually huge rewards for doing this right on the flip side of it. If you can get it right, 74% of consumers report that delivery is the most important part of the overall shopping experience. So again, as we think back to the customer journey, we've spent billions of dollars optimizing a customer journey so that they make a purchase. But as far as the customer sees it, what I really care about is what happens after you spent all those billions of dollars to get me to make a purchase and whether or not you got it in my hands in a satisfactory way. But even more significant than that, 87% of shoppers are more likely to be loyal to a brand that reimburses them for a lost, stolen, or a damaged package. And what I think is so significant about that is this is an interaction that's starting from a really negative outcome. We're starting with the customer reaching out because their package was lost, damaged, or stolen. That's not a happy customer. But if all you have to do is reimburse or replace it, and 87% of the people that had that situation will be more loyal to you, this is a huge stage in that customer journey where there's big opportunity to win loyalty and win customers for a very long time to keep coming back to you. And I think, again, that's why it was shared. Great examples with Apple, great examples with Amazon, like I just shared, and great examples with Postmates. So e-commerce is obviously blown up. Here we are, fast forwarded 10 years down the projections of where we expected to be in 2020. Volume's way up, but it's not getting any easier. Damaged packages are up as carriers have tried to juggle the influx of packages to get them there. Stolen packages are way up. Numbers are even higher now, 131% higher than they were over the holidays, which is insane. So stolen packages and porch pirates is no longer just a holiday headline. It's year round. But I think most significant is that the 205% increase in tracked packages, that even if nothing's going wrong, this is a brand's audition for future purchases, because all of those consumer eyeballs are on the tracking experience. They're waiting for more. They want to know what's coming. And it's putting even more emphasis and more pressure on that post-purchase experience, such that brands have to get it right if they hope to have any kind of experience with a repurchase and maintaining a relationship with that customer. And so ultimately our recommendation is of course our own solution, the Route solution. In short, we'd love to have a more detailed conversation with you and your business, but here's the 2-minute overview, I guess 1-minute overview, is Route is totally free to merchants. We have developed an amazing business model that costs our merchants nothing to partner with us. We have apps on Magento, Shopify, WooCommerce, and BigCommerce so that you can integrate into your checkout process to offer customers the chance to add additional protection to their order. Now it is customer funded, so the customer would pay an additional 98 cents to any orders less than $100, or typically about 2% of the cart total if it's over $100. They choose if they want to add that to their order with one click. It's a very similar experience to the split payment apps that so many of you use. But in this case, it's one click. There's no account to create. There's no approval process. They just turn it on and they add that amount to their order, so that if it's lost, damaged, or stolen, it'll be protected. We have an amazing tracking solution that will track all of their orders in one place, regardless of where they bought it from and regardless of who's delivering it, so that they can get push notifications all along the way, very similar to what we get with Amazon, so that they don't have to worry about saving a tracking number and opening an email and voluntarily going to look for it. And, you know, like Gorgeous highlighted, coming to your chat to try to ask, where's my stuff? And then doing that on 3 other communication channels to try to ask, where's my order? We can keep them updated with push notifications the whole way. If the worst should happen and it's lost, damaged, or stolen, the customer can self-report with 3 taps on their phone, and within 24 hours, Route will purchase a replacement for them from your store at full price to be sent back to them, or we will refund them out of our own account. So the customer gets a solution within 3 taps in a day, and the brand gets to experience the second sale instead of writing off free inventory that you had to give away to make them happy. And then lastly, through this whole process, we've created a revolutionary form of engagement where these very anxious eyeballs looking for their stuff now have a co-branded channel to be able to see your brand, know where their stuff is, be told all along the way when it's coming to them, so that as soon as something goes wrong, they've got amazing self-service tools to be able to resolve it and ultimately create deeper relationships with your brand, come back, discover more products, and repurchase. So we have an awesome promotion. Like I said, we're already free. We're always free. That part's not a short-term promotion. But if you head to route.com/100, you can try it out, and we'll give you a $100 gift card for trying it out. You can always reach out to me, adam@route.com.
Thanks, Adam. And I'll be signing up for that link after the webinar. Appreciate it. All right, Andre, you're up.
All right, thank you so much. Thanks everybody that's presented thus far. My name is Andre Storm. I'm the Director of Sales here at Passport Shipping. We're building the best international cross-border shipping company for direct consumer brands. First, just want to say thanks to Chad and Gina and the whole Skibana team for putting this all together. It's been a great experience, an honor to be here, and thanks to all the attendees. Hope you guys are all getting some value out of the conversations today. So I'm here to talk to you a little bit about cross-border shipping. We've touched on it a little bit up to this point through the ShipBob conversations and things of that nature. And I think I'd like to start with a little bit of story time. So I did used to work in the fulfillment world, and I, like many brands that I've spoken to over the last few years, have really put international at a very distant second to domestic. And there is good reason for it, right? It's typically less volume, higher complexity, and I think that culmination really makes it not high on the initiatives list for a lot of brands. And what we're really trying to do is we're really trying to change that. We're trying to change that mindset. I think, when you look at a lot of brands today, they have international open, they have cross-border open, typically because some customers on their social media or whatever it may be, they don't want to tell, the brand doesn't want to tell the customer no, so they open something up, but it's not a major part of their strategy. And usually it can be tied to, bad past experiences or unfamiliarity with the actual process. And so I'm gonna talk a little bit today about how we're helping brands do that, but just hopefully give you guys some insight into some areas to think about. The way Passport kind of thinks of this is there's 3 main pillars, and each of them I can talk 20 minutes on, so I'm gonna try to keep it very, very short and sweet. The first one is obviously the logistics, getting things from point A to point B. Cross-border shipping is very interesting because it's not always point A to point B. It's kind of like point A to point A1 to point A2. There's a little bit more steps. And so when as a customer seeing the package go through that journey, they really want to be involved and they really want to have a lot of insight into what's actually happening. It's very interesting from what I've learned over the past few years. It's not always the amount of time it takes, and that is high on some people's list. It's them being involved, and I want to mirror a lot what Adam had just mentioned. them really understanding where in the life cycle that package is, and knowing that it's on the way. Typically, when there's a gap, that's when a lot of people, that's when anxiety goes up and all of that. So we're trying to help combat that. So I won't spend too much time on this, but again, mirroring what Raud said, post-purchase is so paramount. It's imperative to really get right. With cross-border shipping, a lot of times what happens with when people are using a type of consolidation model, like a lot of the popular standard services, it's very common to see that as soon as a package leaves the US, tracking becomes a little bit less reliable, a little bit finicky, sometimes non-existent. If you look at certain postal carriers, and people don't know until it actually gets to their door. So there's a big gap in between, and you want to be able to showcase what is actually happening with that package. So the way that we combat that here at Passport is we create really nice branded tracking pages for brands. And the reason why we create them is because we have direct integrations to all of the last mile carriers. In this instance, it's Canada Post, who does a last mile delivery. And so that way you get accurate ETAs, accurate timelines, no dead tracking. And the last thing that we actually do is handle all the customer support for orders that we ship. Because we are the carrier in this instance, we kind of know what kind of questions that people ask. We know what types of, everybody kind of asks similar stuff, whereas my order obviously is going to be the top one, but like I'm not going to be home, those types of things. We intercept those directly on our page and then escalate anything to the brand that's product related, billing related. And the reason why this is important is because as brands enter new markets or test new markets before doing some type of fulfillment there, you don't want to beef up your staff to like really know what's going on. You want things that are actionable. So anything that, returns, exchanges, anything billing related, et cetera. What I really want to talk to you guys today is the whole notion of DDP. DDP, for those unaware, means duties, deliveries paid, essentially giving your customers the option to prepay duties and taxes. Essentially what this does is it bypasses the whole customs fiasco, gets it directly to your customer's door, as close as you can to mimicking a domestic experience that all of us are used to, or many of us. I saw some people that are from outside the US in the chat there. And so with our solution, and there are other solutions out there, what you're able to do is pre-collect those duties and taxes, which means that there's no additional handling fees when it gets into country. You don't have to tell your customers to go travel to the post office to pick it up and pay some additional fees. And then you also bypass, obviously, that area where things sometimes get stuck in customs. And there's 3 things that I want to leave you guys with, and they're all somewhat having to do with DDP. The first one is temporary. Right now, if you're shipping cross-border, if you utilize a service that is using the USPS, which is going through a fiasco right now, as I'm sure many of you are privy to. If you utilize a service that uses a USPS for a leg of that journey, we're seeing some kind of industry-wide delays getting into the cross-border countries. Shipping DDP bypasses the USPS, so you're able to essentially get a TSA pre-check kind of scenario and get it directly into country. There's 2 other macro reasons, and I'll try to keep this quick. They're very nuanced, but I'll do my best here. There's 2 macro changes that have happened, one that's happening next year and one that just happened, that are really pushing people to make DDP a really imperative part of their business. The first one is next year in July of 2021, the EU is removing what's called the de minimis. And the de minimis essentially is a threshold by which if your order value is beneath it, duties and taxes are not owed. And if your order value is above it, then duties and taxes could be owed. It gets even more nuanced. These are all, they vary by country. Also, some countries have a different de minimis for taxes and duties. It becomes very complicated. Our app kind of helps you figure all that stuff out. But what does that all mean? It means that starting in July of next year, you either need to utilize European fulfillment. That's one option. But for most brands that ship cross-border, that means you're either going to have to ship DDP and duties and taxes prepaid, or 100% of your products, even if they're $1, will get stopped and assessed at the border, and just overall guarantee a not very good experience. The second thing I want to bring up to you, which I think is more impactful to brands today, obviously Canada is a huge market. It's our neighbor to the north. There was recently an update to the North American Free Trade Agreement. The update is called the USMCA, the US Mexico-Canada Agreement. And what this did, it raised the de minimis for taxes and duties in Canada. So it raised the tax de minimis from 20 to 40 Canadian dollars, and then the duty de minimis from 20 to 150 Canadian dollars. What does that mean? That means if you have an average order value, or you have some order profiles that are under 30 US dollars, your products now go duty and tax free when it was previously 15. But I would think, I assume most of the people fall into the second camp, which is if your average order value, or you have certain order profiles that are under 112 US dollars, they'll now go through duty free, which means that the only thing that your customers would have to pay is a tax. And that tax can vary between 5 to 15%, depending on the province. Some things are provincial. And what that means is the delta between what people were doing before with DDU and DDP becomes a lot smaller. And depending again on your order profile and all of that stuff, it could really result in a lot of savings. So I tried to throw it out as fast as I could. There's a lot of nuance here. We do have an offer here for a complimentary DDP analysis to see if you can take advantage of these new changes. And feel free to reach out to me or my team. We'll send all of our details after, and I'll be in the chat and see if we have time for a Q&A. So
thank you, Andre. I appreciate it. We got one more presentation. It's going to be Tony. It's going to be a good one because I'm a big geek on payments and wire transfers, and he knows his stuff. So we wanted to bring him on. You don't see him on the webinar network, but maybe after this you will. And then stay tuned for a special guest joining us at the end. There's a lot of questions in the question tab, and I'm going to bring on a special man named Hendrik, and he'll introduce himself, who is a renowned expert in cross-border and everything international and everything domestic as well. He has an awesome newsletter that I've been subscribing to for a very long time. That's where I learned most of my knowledge. And so we'll just stay tuned on that, and we're going to give it away to Tony.
Great. Thanks, Chad. So you guys have everything set up. Oh, which way are we going here? So we have everything set up in for doing the complimentary shipping and doing all these supports. But now, how do you get your money? So you have your first client, they do their payments, and let's say you expanded to Europe. They send the euros in, and now all of a sudden you've got a bunch of euros. What do you do with those euros? How do you get paid? So one of my clients called me a couple of years ago and said, Tony, we're utilizing you for all the international payments. We're converting the US dollars to euros, GBP, Aussie dollar, sending it all around the world to do our payments. But we want to expand into Ireland. We want to do all of the Europe. So how do we get there? We've set up an office. We've reached out to the bank. We need our corporate bank account. We're trying to get everything set up and regulated. We spent over $10,000, yet they're charging us a ton of money. So let's use an example. They're receiving $2,000 a day. Those $2,000, they're being charged 5% to convert the euros into US dollars. So that $2,000 is now at $1,900. Now that bank is charging them another $40 to send the money from Europe to the US. So that $1,900, that just turns into $1,860. So now that client sent that $1,860 to the US. It takes 2 days. Now, that $1,860 has hit their bank account at $1,820, and they freak out because they said, where'd the other $40 go? And the bank is trying to explain to them that they take fees out as the money goes cross-border. So now they've just lost 9% of their revenue before they've ever done anything with it. So what is it that they can do to help supplement that? How do they get rid of that? So what we're looking at now is, why is it hard? Why are people having such difficulty moving cross-border? So you need to understand what those costs are to get the money from Europe, from those places that you're expanding into, back to the US. What fees are you going to see? How is your client going to send you the money? You're not going to expand into Spain and charge your clients US dollars. You're going to charge them euros. You're not going to go to the UK and charge them USD either. It's got to be in Great British pounds. So what is it that you need to do in order to get the money there? What are the problems that you're seeing? What can you anticipate? And how do you not give away all of your revenue to the banks? So what we're seeing is that in order to help people move the money cross-border, Currency Cloud has partnered with Cubana because Cubana has realized that this is a massive problem for small businesses. You're not going to get the good rates that the large corporations get. You need to be able to move that money across the country lines. So how do you do that? What can Currency Cloud and Cubana help you with? So what we're able to do is by utilizing our regulation, the Currency Cloud regulation, you can then onboard different bank accounts around the world. So what you have the access to by integrating with Cubana is you have access to do 34 different currencies: Aussie dollar, Mexican pesos, euros, you name it. You'll be able to top up those accounts in those local currencies. Now, you can choose to pay out your suppliers in those currencies, or you can convert them. So let's just say you want to collect those 2,000 euros in, you can convert those 2,000 euros, and then you can make a payment out. Now, the other thing that you could do is you can pay them locally. So in my example, I was explaining how sometimes they'll take fees out as you're trying to do cross-border payments. If you're integrated with the local networks, you can't take those fees out anymore. So that money is received in full. That $2,000 just got received as $2,000. You just saved that 9% in the cross-border fees. So how is it that you can integrate with these networks? How is it legal that you can do this? So by piggybacking off of Currency Cloud's regulation, we can supply those bank accounts for you so that you can supply cross-border payments. So by integrating into this network, you're saving money on the transactions, the fees, as well as the international bank account fees.
Tony, can you also just talk about actually wiring to your vendors abroad too, and talk about how there's all these obfuscated fees in that process? Because I think this is really enlightening.
Yeah. So one thing that you'll notice is when you send a fee, let's just say you're using Discover Bank, they're going to charge you an international wire fee. Now that money will most likely not land full. They'll also charge you an exorbitant amount of money to send that there. So what Currency Cloud has done is we've integrated with the local banks around the world. Let's say a bank in Australia. That way we top up the account there for all of our clients, and then we can send it locally. So for an example is in the US, we use a network that's called the ACH network. So when you're sending money around the world or around the US, you're utilizing that network, which is very cheap. Now think Venmo, right? Venmo is just sending the money to the network. The money is available very quickly, but you can't do that internationally. With the integration to those local partners, you can now utilize that kind of network internationally. So you can connect to all those different currencies around the world and send them almost instantaneously.
Yeah, it's pretty awesome. When we first launched together, Cubana and Currency Cloud, we were comparing what I typically use for my payments, which is Amex FX, and it was like 3.8%. And the difference was actually, I didn't even know that they were taking 3.8% on the currency conversion. And I think most people that are dialed in today probably don't know that as well. So make sure that you're just understanding all the hidden fees that go into making wire transfers, whether it's one way or the other way.
Exactly. Great. Thanks, Chad.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much, Tony. All right. So time for Q&A. I've never done this before. This is going to be a first. So we're going to pull in. So we're going to probably go over for the hour. So if you don't want to kick around, it's no worries. First, I want to see if there's any questions. I think we answered most of the questions from the companies that are joining today. So this is going to be more of a off-the-cuff conversation, just having a conversation together. Let me see how I can pull Hendrik into the stage. And there are a few other questions that came in. Actually, before we pull Hendrik in, there are some questions that came in when we launched this webinar. So let me actually pull those up real quick. We're going to have a lightning round, and then we're going to pull Hendrik on stage. Sound good? Cool. All right. So so the first one, it looks like, was going to Gorgias. What advice do you give sellers looking to translate their branding and voice to new territories? I think we actually covered that already. Okay. How about live chat? How do you implement live chat for Gorgias internationally?
Yeah. So So live chat, like I mentioned, we can detect 54 different languages. So if they're on your specific nationality page, like I would encourage you to kind of set up different chats according to those different pages. So that'll allow you to kind of respond really efficiently and make sure that you're handling all the different inquiries that come in. Live chat specifically, as I mentioned, drives a lot of revenue if you can respond really quickly. So I highly encourage you to use it. With Gorgias, it's, you know, really, it comes out of the box with our platform. So it takes almost no time to set up.
Okay, great. And then, what are some mistakes you're seeing people make in territories? Any big mistakes you can call attention to?
Yeah, I think not, like I said, not having the well-organized views, sets, and tags, and same with kind of like not responding in the right language or the dialect of that country. So making sure that auto respond is in the correct language, or you're assigning to the right team, so you're not just like scrambling and trying to figure out. So really understand your customer base before you're kind of just using a generic language, but understand like who it's coming from and kind of do some analysis on your customers.
All right, and ShipBob, you've got fulfillment centers located internationally. You mentioned, I think, 2 of them that you've just built. What's the vision for the further international growth?
Yeah, so our goal is to mirror the level of economies of scale that we have in the domestic US and our offering there. We're looking to mirror that into our international locations. So I think, you know, expanding our geographic coverage in Canada and the EU, as well as our carrier coverage, and being able to offer, you know, a similar level of resources that we do in the US, and venturing into new space. You know, there's some learnings to be had, right? New carrier integrations, new payments integrations, new customer service and translation integrations, all of these things. You kind of have to Frankenstein a monster together using all of our great brands. So, you know, past that, I think, you know, pending Europe going well, it'll probably be Southeast Asia as well. We've had a lot of requests for customers that actually have Australian end customers. There's an absolute lack of fulfillment, delivery, transport solutions in Australia. So we're looking, you know, hopefully by the end of the year, next year, to be in Southeast Asia.
And then
Australia
Andre,
well.
how do you guarantee duties and taxes? Provide an estimate?
What's that?
How do you guarantee duties and taxes or provide an estimate? Like, how does that process work for you? How do you implement it? How do you implement Passport as well?
Yeah, definitely. So we guarantee duties and taxes that are collected in cart, and we do that. It's unique to us because we do take the onus as the carrier in this instance. We pull all of our information from the shopping cart, so Shopify, WooCommerce, Magento, virtually any cart, and use that for providing duties and taxes. Passport implementation, it typically only takes about a week or 2. We have a pretty unique model because we typically work through virtue of 3PLs. So we have a bunch of 3PLs in our network, and a lot of the work from an infrastructure perspective is kind of front loaded. And so getting up and live and getting the app and all that stuff typically takes about a week.
Got it. Okay. I think we covered most of those questions that came in. So thank you so much for joining as panelists. Thanks for contributing to this, guys. We're about to extend in a big way. So I'm going to join Hendrik on. If you want to stay around for this awesome session, please do. If you want to yield your time and you want to just go back to what you're doing, please feel free. And so I just sent the invite to Hendrik. Let's see if he joins. This is going to be fun. Again, I've never done this before, so hopefully we break the internet here. Kim Kardashian style. It says getting ready. So Hendrik, you're getting ready. Let's see if there's anything else that came in here.
He's waiting for his intro music.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah. I think one thing we talked about is experimenting when you're going cross-border. Using a service like Passport's the perfect way to get that first like foot in the door, right? You don't have to invest all your inventory into a different country. Like, it's a really great way to eliminate the kind of thorny parts of the customer relationship with that end delivery, right?
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them end up having to go to their local customs facility or the local post office to actually go pick up and then pay additional on top of the premium they're already paying for those VATs and duties. So like using someone like Passport is actually an excellent like first step in the door to make sure that you do have a market that you're actually reaching into. So that kind of came full circle.
Nice.
Can't plan that all out.
Tony, is there anything you want to talk
Right.
about in terms of like the obfuscation of payments going the other way? Because like I know, you've gone into a ton of detail. If you can just share some quick insight on that, and then we're moving right into Hendrik, who's just joined.
Sure. So when you're sending payments out, so the key here is topping up the accounts quickly and getting the money out quickly. So really what you are looking for is that they receive the total amount of money. So the last thing you want to do is send money out internationally and have it received short and then people not processing your orders. So the really important thing is, how do you get around the timelines and how do you get around getting the payments there in its full amount? So what you want to do is, by utilizing the Currency Cloud network, is you can actually top up the money locally and then pay it out locally internationally. And that way you're not having to pay and wait for those extended timelines.
Cool. All right. Without further ado, we've got who I consider the e-commerce whisperer, Hendrik. So Hendrik, if you don't mind just introducing yourself a bit. Also, if you don't mind sharing your newsletter, don't worry. It's not that you're being self-promotional. It's actually just that you drop a lot of value on it. So do you mind just sharing a little bit about your background and where you focus your attention and time?
So no problem, Chad. Yes, my name is Hendrik Loubser. I'm the founder and chief analyst of a company with the name of Blue Cape Ventures. We're a boutique research consultancy which specializes in marketplaces and cross-border e-commerce. I've worked in a decade in e-commerce in emerging markets, and these days I advise brands with ARR and GMV of anything between $25 million to $40 billion. So have been in the space for years. Cross-border for me is arguably the most exciting part of e-commerce, just because of the fact that it's growing at gangbusters like before COVID. And yeah, it's just a case of I'm trying to help people understand what's going on in the market. And thus my newsletter is essentially a weekly summary of what's in the news, what is newsworthy, and what's important to be aware of.
And how do people find you or your newsletter?
So the easiest way to do it is Gina was as usual, very efficient. The easiest way to find my newsletter is my Twitter handle. I've pinned at the top of it my newsletter, or the other way is just go to my blog, and then there's a section called newsletter, and then you can subscribe for it.
Got it. Very cool. All right. Well, so let's drop some value if we can. Sounds like Andre's going to jump. Again, if you want to kick around, please feel free. I'm just a nerd like that, and I like to explore these topics in a deeper way. So being that you're so focused internationally, I guess, what are you seeing around the world right now? What are the marketplaces that e-commerce merchants in the United States should be capitalizing on? Walk me through what's going on in your brain as I mentioned those topics.
So for me, as a person sitting outside the US, I think, as you mentioned, for me, number one is, if you're a US brand, number one is you should be thinking very hard about Canada, and you should be thinking very hard about Mexico, in that order, just because of the fact that it's close by. It gives you access to consumers close by. There's no need for investment in terms of customer service in like foreign time zones and all of that, but also it's for me it's a very natural extension, because your logistics operations are close by and it doesn't really require a huge amount of investment. So that's the one issue. The second issue is that one of the mistakes I see very often is that brands and businesses of all sizes go into cross-border too quick. And I think what's very important is that when you go cross-border, you have to have like you mentioned in your slides, put your foot in the water, but don't swim. Because if you swim, you might have to dive, and then it becomes really bad. So I believe very strongly that if you want to test international, the most easiest way to do that off the bat is to, do the unthinkable. Use Amazon for a month or two. Leverage their superior SEO in local markets. The fact that they have all of the ecosystem already in place, logistics, credit card.
And you're saying Amazon, though, even though in China or in, yeah, I'm sure you'll get
So,
to this.
so Amazon in Europe, definitely. Amazon in Japan, definitely. Amazon in India, definitely. But as I said earlier, start small. So go to Amazon Canada as step number 1. Then step number 2, go to Amazon Mexico. And then use that marketplace as a test bed. I think there's this inherent fear that all brands are going to miss out on cross-border. No, they're not. It's $1 trillion opportunity. But the point is that you can lose hundreds of millions of dollars if you don't do this right. So use the marketplace, and then depending on your capabilities and what you're seeing in terms of sales, then you invest by, using partners to create a local business that has a website that you then drive traffic to, which you are then controlling the consumer. Because this is all about owning the consumer. I hate saying that, but that is the truth. You don't want to use a marketplace for a long time, but it's the easiest and the safest way.
And there was a question that came in from Mark, actually a customer of ours, Caraway, and he was saying, look, without being too biased, what are some of the pros and cons of using maybe a distributor or a reseller online internationally to expand versus actually going at it yourself?
So one, you mentioned it right off the bat. I think step number 1 would be, as a brand owner, you've invested millions of dollars into your IP. You need to ensure that you have the trademarks and all of that registered before you go into any market. So that's number 1. Number 2, I think with everything in life, it's about trying to understand what the end goals are. So I would, for me, distributors, I've had not great experiences with distributors, in the sense that you're just one of many brands, and in general it hurts businesses because they're only about looking at the bottom line and not doing the right thing. So you can have customer experience problems, which leads to massive amounts of unhappiness for consumers, where, sometimes one of the other questions people mentioned, using local partners. I think for me that is an easier way, i.e. if you go into Mexico, use an agency or a business that their core business is helping people on a marketplace in Mexico or in Canada. Because the problem with all of these businesses, especially the distributors, is that they want to move product. They are a licensee and they generate revenue no matter how many products you sell. Whereas if you'd go via an agency or a partner or somebody experienced in the market, your brand is going to get premium attention, and you're going to replicate the consumer experience in your home market outside the home market, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important for me, at least, to share that for a D2C brand, you need to have a one-to-one connection with your customer.
Yeah.
And anytime you have a middleman in the middle, there's room for disintermediation. And these middlemen don't really care about your brand at the end of the day. Like you've mentioned, is that they're here to take on as many brands as possible, right? Put them through the funnel and to just spray and pray into the market.
Sadly, that is so. But I think for me, as I say again, cross-border e-commerce is a really expensive situation, in the sense that it's not hard, it's just complicated. So I think, it's easy to say that, you can, open free shipping for a month or 2 and take the pain. But the problem is that, it's also, you creating expectations for consumers that potentially may not be the same. The next time I go back to the brand, suddenly it's no longer free shipping and I have to pay shipping. So I know it's not a popular opinion to use a marketplace, but use it sparingly. As I said, for like a month to 2 months maximum. Take your learnings from it. These marketplaces have data that they provide you. And then based off those learnings, then invest into your own business by using businesses such as, so from a D2C point of view, Passport, that was just on earlier, they are cool to work with. I'm just trying to think, a Flow in New Jersey, they work with D2C brands. They are all these businesses that you can use, but that's only after you have market validation. You know, don't go to invest millions of dollars looking for market validation. First, validate whether there is a need for your brand, and then you go into the market.
Yeah, and the next thing that comes to mind is like, well, you're going to use the marketplace, but rest assured that the marketplace is also going to use you in a way, right? Because you're just another brand, you're leveraging their platform. Amazon does this all the time where they see what you're selling, right? They manufacture now, not everything, but at least they are in the business of collecting data. And so this is one point in your life where you can actually use them to collect data as well.
Yes. I think also it's very important to mention to our listeners is that, you know, I'm not saying that you must put your entire selection on Amazon. That's not what I'm saying. So what I've seen is brands, in some cases, might have the prescient and ability to actually develop a product that's only available on the marketplace, that's related to a hero product, or you know, they upload, for example, not these top 10 bestsellers, but products like that are in like the middle group of sales, so that it doesn't hurt the top line of the business, but it also provides you with validation. Because you, in general, any brand does not know how the brand will sell in a foreign market. If anybody claims that they have that science, I'm yet to see it, and I've been in this space a decade, and I haven't found any method that works, and with the exception of going via this. But also, Chad, the other thing to mention is this: that if you're going into an emerging market like Brazil or Southeast Asia or India or in the Middle East or Mexico, for example, people have to understand that most, if not all, people are going to the marketplace because that is where everything is. So because the markets are so underdeveloped, you know, marketplaces are where all the eyeballs are. Sorry. So the point is that in those cases, it makes sense to use the marketplace, but also, as I say again, it's buyer beware at all times, you know. But as I say, small amount of SKUs, not your most profitable SKUs by any chance, but understand that you're collecting data for between 4 to 8 weeks. Generally, for me, the sweet spot is at week 6. And then from there on, you can make decisions about what is the next steps.
All right, we got 3 more minutes lightning round. I'm going to have you on for a bigger webinar tour, but this was just us dipping the toes in the water, right, in a way. So let's just say, okay, like the argument is Amazon Germany is bigger than Amazon Mexico and Amazon Canada.
Yeah.
Where else should people be looking for growth right now, especially if you're a fast-growing hyper-growth brand in the United States? I know you're mentioning Canada and you're mentioning Mexico, but like where else should people be looking? Is it by category? Like mention some marketplaces, or give us some nuggets here for those that decide to stay on to do what others weren't willing to do on the webinar.
So I think the most important thing that people need to understand is for me, the first step that I would do before any decision is I would go and find out what is the actual COVID shipping, what's going on in terms of the company, in terms of COVID, you know, and what countries are opening faster. They are. So, for example, Spain, Italy, France, the European Union is further along opening than the US. So that's an important thing to use. So the EU for me is always an opportunity, and also the fact is that their consumers are more willing to shop online, and in cases are looking for value. And these fast-growing D2C brands are providing value by creating quality products. So for me, that makes total sense. But I think it's all about understanding that essentially you are wanting to ensure that you are able to control to a degree your customer experience. So Germany is, I think, 6 or 7 hours ahead of the US, so it's not that bad. But if you go and you want to go to Japan or China, one of these really big markets, which are important, you know, that's very, very far along. So from there on, basically, for me, basically go across the Atlantic, Europe, in order of priority, from where I'm sitting, and I have no interest in any market or any country. I don't get paid by the travel businesses. Germany would be the one that I'd look at number 1. Then I'd go to Spain. Then I'd go to the UK. and the like and the like. The major reason is that in Germany, the government has done a lot of work to ensure that e-commerce has basically been almost unimpacted because of their regulations with regards to COVID.
Got it. And how about getting to China really quick before China starts copying you? Is there any suggestion you have there before we hop off?
So number one, if you are dealing with somebody in China that manufactures your product, which I'm sure many of the listeners and webinar viewers are, number one, make sure that you have a watertight contract with that manufacturer to make it very clear that they only manufacture that product for you and they can't manufacture it for anybody else. Number one. Number two, trademark, copyright is vital in that market. I can't stress that enough. Three, ensure that there are almost always products that there are some degree of final elements that need to be done in your home market. So it's not a finally finished product in China, just because of the fact that you're leaving yourself a degree of protection against copying. But also, I think the other thing I just want to jump up and say here is that this is another mistake I also see, especially DTC brands make. China is a really important market, but it's also very large, very expensive, and is not one of the markets that you should be going to in the first 2 years of going global. No. Get your house in order, use North America, then Europe, then a bit of Latin America, and then you've got everything solved. Then you go after the big market, China.
Awesome. You heard it here, folks. First, thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Hendrik, for volunteering to come on stage and for dropping value. To be continued into the next session that we jam together. Thanks, everybody.